I heard too many people speaking from the perspective of someone who had actually experienced years of life in a neighborhood like this.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. You know it's an issue that has people's attention when more than 100 sign up to have their say to Charlotte City Council. It's what happened back in late March. Council was getting feedback on the 2040 Comprehensive Plan. That is that 300-page document that lays out a vision for what Charlotte should look like in 20 years, where investments will be made, how the city will be developed. When you're adding 100 or so people a day to the population, when affordability and equity are rising concerns, it is certainly going to get people's attention because you're talking about some pretty big changes. And we were reminded that night that people have different priorities in all this. Take Vernetta Mitchell. She's with the Far East Neighborhood Coalition, one of those parts of the city being bulldozed for new construction.
So yes, we have been established for about 6 months now, specifically because of the compensation plan and the lack thereof in some cases.
So what's going to be here behind us?
Oh, this used to be a beautiful tree canopy. What's this behind us is about 168 single-family homes.
Okay.
Just on the other side, not a quarter of a mile, on the other side of Reedy Creek Plantation, they're getting ready to develop 78 townhomes. So within less than a quarter of a mile span, you're going to increase density. Mm-hmm. The transportation plan for these two developments within that mile has one left turn lane. There's still no discussion of transportation. 70% of the residents on this side of town have to rely on cars.
You know the development's inevitable, though, right?
Inevitable, and we don't agree, and we don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
The planning of the development is what we're having concerns with.
Have they reached out to you at all, this side of town?
Yes, they have.
How long ago?
Probably about 3 months ago, because we really became very vocal about what was going on with the compensation plan.
Well, and the planning was pretty far down the road by that point.
And that was one of our other concerns, is that most of this compensation plan was developed with input from somebody before it was even really presented to the rest of the Charlotte area to provide comment on. We weren't in that conversation.
Then there's the issue that really sort of blew up. The 2040 plan talks about getting rid of single-family only zoning. That's one lot, one house. It is right now how 84% of Charlotte's residential land is zoned. Activists say that type of zoning restricts supply, drives up prices, and forces a lot of people to live a long way from where they work. The 2040 plan would allow duplexes and triplexes anywhere. It's something the city of Minneapolis is trying.
So we want options between just a single family home or a 200-unit apartment building, which, there's a lot of room for growth in the city between those two extremes. Those 3 units within that triplex are likely to be more affordable than the single family home that was there. Also, just adding to the overall supply of housing generally helps with the issue of affordability.
Now, Jesse Kimmel spoke up that night to say he likes that idea, and we caught up with him in Plaza Midwood to find out why. Speaking of city council meetings, is that a regular thing for you?
No, I know that the 2040 plan was coming up, and I just thought, I don't know if I heard too many people speaking from the perspective of someone who had actually experienced years of life in a neighborhood like this.
I mean, the whole 10-minute idea, right? Being 10 minutes from pretty much everything, you've got that here.
Yeah, well, having a little town center and bars you like to go to or parks you like to go to. I mean, you see people running and walking and playing with their kids out in their yard on a beautiful day like today. This is... Yeah, I mean, there's really nothing not to like about it.
Do you understand when some people, though, maybe in a single-family neighborhood in other parts of the city who bought thinking that's what this was going to look like forever, suddenly, having a neighbor tear down and put up a triplex?
Well, I can understand how change is uncomfortable for people, but I also have driven around in those neighborhoods, and I don't see quite the same sort of social activity that you see. And don't get me wrong, people love their neighbors. I'm sure that people have wonderful neighborhoods all over the city, but my genuine belief is that if you introduce a greater mix, and certainly if you start to introduce opportunities for commerce and jobs nearby, in 3 or 4 years, the people who feel trepidation are going to be pretty happy that these changes have been made, because it's going to enrich their lives as well.
But it is that zoning issue that has really gotten the most pushback. Neighborhood associations, builders, and people who hadn't been following the process suddenly were saying, hey, wait, what's going on here? Is a triplex going up next door to me? And how is this going to work?
One thing I'm confused a little bit about here with this 2040 plan is, why did this seemingly catch so many people off guard?
It wasn't that it caught us off guard. It was that we had multiple years of seeing really the same high-level summary slides of what its purpose is and what it could achieve one day. And we were always like, this is cool. Can't wait to see some of the underlying things. Not a surprise 320-page document that popped out and says, here's the finished thing, need you to vote on it soon. I personally feel like the planning director, who was the author of this entire thing, who had the ball, essentially the leeway to do as he saw fit, decided that he was going to craft a document more on his own. And I think now we're seeing the fallout from that.
So should that person still be in the job?
I'm losing confidence. Whether you are for or against what is in this plan today, I think we could all hopefully agree, you don't put something out publicly and run it down without knowing at least how your council members are going to react to it. That's unacceptable. And if that alone is probably a fireable offense, but how it's been treated since then has really been us trying to negotiate with him. And that's no longer acceptable.
I think Taiwo Jayoba is one of the most qualified city planners in America, and we would be foolish to even suggest that. You know, it is our job. It is the job of 12 people in this city to communicate. It is the job of elected representatives to be the interface between what happens inside of our walls to the greater community.
Republican Tark Bokhari, Democrat Braxton Winston, not agreeing on the role of the city planner in all this, and they don't agree on this issue really of zoning either. Today, we did get some word that some changes are coming to this plan, some language tweaks. In a memo to council members, it says duplexes and triplexes would be allowed in all place types, not necessarily all lots.
So the rush of interest and the rush of engagement that we're experiencing right now is a welcome thing. It is an expected thing, and is the right thing to be happening right about now.
Obviously, the pushback really started to come on strong when it came to single-family zoning and talks of duplexes and triplexes in basically any neighborhood in the city. Were you surprised by that?
I was not surprised by this pushback. Change is difficult. Change is something that we all want, but when change happens, it comes really right up to our doorstep. People are going to have questions, and that is the beautiful thing about democracy.
So the city manager offering up some amendments on that. Explain the difference here from going from all lots to all place types.
Yeah, it's just it just makes less sense now. So I don't know how to say it other than that. Before, all lots is what is highly, highly dangerous to me, and what I think the future of the city's potential will hold. Not because we don't need density. We need density. We're growing like wildfire right now. Having the density and the stock of housing units is critical. However, doing so without any regard to what it will do to affordability, the thing that we put $50 million in a record-breaking bond a few years ago that we spend all of our time and energy, seems crazy to me.
So it's not going to solve the problems, what you're saying. This doesn't address affordability,
it's
access.
Exacerbate the problem. And it's not going to be someone saying, well, I'm going to take this $300,000 lot and create $50,000 for sale homes. They're going to create $290,000 triplexes each.
It's creating, people, are creating some hypothetical situations under the conditions that are optimized under our current growth plan. Again, what we have to remember here, we exist in a Charlotte that regulates gentrification, that it uses gentrification as an active growth strategy. And we know that there are certain neighborhoods that are in different cycles of gentrification. And whether we change the status quo or not, we are going to have to deal with those realities.
It will ultimately be a situation of the more affluent neighborhoods are going to be the ones who can say, no, we're not going to allow it here because we're organized and we have lawyers that live in our neighborhood. And it's going to be the less affluent, less sophisticated neighborhood associations that aren't going to be able to battle it. And it's going to be the even worse outcome. And to me, that's what we must defend against.
When you squeeze people into places and don't provide access to good schools, to good food, to safe communities, to safe streets, the citizens will not put up with that. This comprehensive 2040 plan is a direct result of the agitation and the demands of the people of Charlotte over the past 5 years.
Vote could come on this as early as mid-June. Let us know what you think. Use the hashtag OYS Tonight on Twitter or email AskJamie@WBTV.com.